Yo everyone, welcome back to another episode of Duncan Shows You right here on the Marin Bikes YouTube channel. On today's video, we're going to run through how to do the perfect manual. For those of you who know me, I absolutely love doing manuals, mostly on my trials bike. So in today's video, whilst we're going to be showing you guys how to learn the basics of manual, I'm also going to be trying to perfect my own manuals right here on this Riftzone Carbon mountain bike. It's a medium travel mountain bike with 29er wheels, but I'm pretty sure it should be up to the job for learning how to do some good manuals on the mountain bike. Not only are we going to be going through some of the top tips to learn and perfect those manuals, I'm also going to be running through a few of the likely mistakes that some of you guys may make, just so you guys don't make the same mistakes I did when I was learning this trick back in the day. You're going to want to have your seat reasonably low, so if you've got a dropper post, drop it down. And if you've got a regular seat post, you can also put it down, just because, as you're going to soon see, we're going to be showing you how to maneuver your body around the bike, and getting that seat nice and out of the way is going to be super important to not only popping your manual as well as maintaining it for as long as possible. In terms of setting and surface for learning this trick, because I'm doing this on a mountain bike, I think it's best to learn on a slight hill, and it's quite important that it's not super steep, but just that slight incline of that hill is going to help you pop and maintain that manual on the mountain bike. Whereas if you're on a BMX or even say the trials bike, flatter ground will probably work just as well. Given the nature of a manual, it's all about basically popping manuals between trails or maybe when you're coming down a forest road. So I think it's all about basically learning to manual in the suspension settings that you're most likely to be using out on the trails. So to give you guys the best possible chance of learning and perfecting your manuals, I'm going to try and break it into two distinct parts and sections. The first one being the setup and the popping of the manual, which is basically getting the front wheel up in the air, which is obviously pretty important. And then after that, we can then look at different techniques and tips to help you maintain that manual for as long as possible. One of the most common mistakes that I see people doing is, rather than basically moving your whole body back and your bike coming with you, people will try and not do a preload and basically pull their handlebars straight up to themselves. If you're strong, you will be able to get your front wheel in the air, but because you've just pulled your bars towards you by bending your arms, it's completely unsustainable, and your front wheel will just come back down straight to the ground, and there's nothing you can do about it. There should almost be like an L in your body, which we're showing some slow-mos, and that's basically moving your whole body back and then your bike comes with you rather than pulling your bike towards you. So it should look a little something like this. I'll probably mess it up, but... So you'll see that whilst my arms aren't necessarily completely straight, they still are kind of moving back as a unit with the rest of my body, and you're getting your bum right over the back of the wheel. When you're, say, watching some of your favourite riders do manuals on their mountain bikes on Instagram or YouTube, it might look super effortless, so it might make you think that it's quite a smooth move, but when it's actually you doing it yourself, it's actually quite an aggressive move. So I really can't stress enough how kind of much you need to exaggerate that quick but firm preload, and then that snap back and then sort of locking your body back in. Like I say, it's quite hard to explain, so we'll show a few slow-mos of it happening now, and hopefully that will give you guys a little bit of an insight of how to do it. So you're basically going to combine that fast snap with a backwards pulling motion rather than up. So it's all about kind of pulling your bike backwards. Again, I keep going on about exaggeration, but on the mountain bike especially, over the, say, the BMX, the trials bike, getting the manual up is all about exaggeration. So you're going to exaggerate the snap, exaggerate how hard you're going to pull, and you're even going to exaggerate how far back on the bike you go, because again, sometimes when you're looking at people riding, it might look like they're not far on their bike, but it always feels more extreme than it looks, if you know what I mean. So you might be pulling back and your bum might be, like, say, just hovering over the seat, because that's the natural position for your bum to be when you're riding your bike. But it's actually, the reality of it is, especially when you're on the mountain bike, your bum's like back here basically. So think of basically trying to get your ass right over the back tire, or even over the back of, even further back, to help basically get that front wheel up in the air. And by getting yourself into that motion, you're going to give yourself the best possible chance of actually keeping that front wheel up and getting a long manual on the go. So now we've perfected getting that front wheel in the air and getting that snap, popping that manual for the first time. We can now move on to look at some different tips and tricks to help you guys maintain that manual for as long as possible. This is a bit of a random one, but I think it really helps and it can feel super weird. But basically, manuals are all about maintaining that perfect balance point, or they're basically working within a threshold before and after that balance point, whether or not your front wheel is going too low or going too far back. People, when they're getting to learn this trick, are always going to be a little bit concerned about what I would call looping out, which is going off the back. If you have this fear, and you have this fear strong in your mind, it means you're always going to be struggling to get close to that balance point. And one way to get over this is actually to learn and get comfortable with what looping out or going too far back is. And the way I would do that is going back to your snap technique and really exaggerating it and seeing what it feels like to actually loop out over the back and get comfortable with putting your feet down and just landing feet first, so you know that that loop out isn't going to end in catastrophe, especially at a reasonable pace. So it's basically going all the way to the balance point, getting past it, but almost being ready for it. And basically what you can do is just jump off with one or both of your feet, and you just land holding your handlebars with your feet on the ground. This obviously isn't necessarily going to work when you're going at a pace faster than you can run. Again, it can feel super weird to begin with and kind of counterintuitive because you're not going to want to shoot off the back. But like I say, it's really important to learning to sort of test the limits and test the waters with what that sort of perfect balance point is. And I guess if you're learning wheelies, nose manuals, not that I'm very good at nose manuals, the same principle applies, because once you get comfortable with pushing the balance point too far that way, it just gives you that ability to lock it in without being too stressy about looping over the back. So basically, when you're popping a manual, you're in a sort of constant battle of keeping your front wheel in the air. When you're in that balance point or close to that balance point, it'll feel nice and easy, but occasionally, whether you hit a bump or maybe just lose a bit of balance, your front wheel will be getting a little bit too close to the ground. And the way of pulling it back up is essentially going back to what that sort of initial popping technique, but not as extreme, and basically just moving your whole body weight back. I sometimes would lift my knees up a little bit, and what that will do is pull your front wheel a little bit up from the ground and get you back closer to that balance point. When the front wheel is going too low, I do kind of almost straighten my knees a little bit temporarily, just to give that sort of weight a little bit of a shock to get it back. And the key to that one is basically making a subtle but firm adjustment that's enough to get you back to the balance point, and then you can kind of go back into that sort of locked in phase, if you know what I mean, and carry on your way, popping a big long manual. So that's a way of getting back to the balance point when your front wheel is getting too close to the ground. We're now going to look what happens when it goes the other way and your front wheel is getting too far away from the ground and you're in danger of going off the back. We do this by using a back brake if you've got one, and basically what that will do is, as you're getting a little bit too far past the balance point, with some careful taps and modulated movements in the back brake, that'll help just pull the front wheel down ever so slightly and hopefully get you locked back into the balance point. Again, like all these things, it is a difficult process to kind of fine-tune that movement in your finger to kind of see what feels right, because it's all about modulation, especially if you've got really powerful brakes. But again, it's just a feel of that. Sometimes you'll do it and your front wheel will just come straight back down, and sometimes you maybe won't do it enough. So it's all about just practicing that and seeing what feels right. Too far back, take it back down. Oh, arse off the seat, the tyre. That was all three different things happening at once. Too low, too far back, bum off the tyre. But yeah, basically when the back wheel, when you're going a little bit too steep, you'll know what it feels like when it does. Just a little tap of that back brake till it goes back down ever so slightly, and then you can let go of the brakes again and be on your way. Too far back, brake. Too far forward. Quite often you might not get either one of those techniques right, and then you have to do the opposite one straight after it, because quite often you'll pull the back brake just a little bit too much and you'll go beyond the balance point. So then you have to use that sort of body weight and sort of getting your knees just a little bit straighter and pulling back to go back. So it's not necessarily always a case of, oh, I'm too steep, I go straight back to the balance point. It might be, I'm going too steep, okay, now I'm not steep enough, now it's perfect. Or you could even pendulum pendulum a few times, because I guess, like I say, the manual is essentially, whilst you do sometimes lock that position in perfect and can keep it like that, it's still just an ongoing process of moving either side of that balance point. And whilst it'd be great to just lock them in, the reality is, especially if you're riding your mountain bike over anything other than like perfect flat terrain, which you pretty much never have, you're just constantly going to be going between that, well, going on either side of that balance point. Didn't have to use too many of the techniques, kind of locked it in pretty good, but even when you do a perfect one, yeah, it's still just an ongoing battle with keeping the front wheel in the air using the old body weight technique and keeping yourself from looping out at times with the back brake technique. But I can't really think of any other tips. I think that's like the main point. But if you guys do have any other questions on the technique when you guys try and learn it, please comment below and I'll do my best to get back and help you guys. So that is the end of the video. I hope you guys found it interesting and it's going to help you guys pop some mint wheelies. If you do have any questions, like I said, please comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you. We'd also love to hear what you'd like to see us do next, so again, comment below. If you do have any questions about this bike or any of the Marin range, please comment below, and again, those guys will be happy to help. But we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.